There have been a number of discussions that we have had with the Chinese and others about what we think is inappropriate activity in that realm. But it's not just a question of some of these large nation states and our adversaries in certain areas. There is just a lot of capability that's developing, particularly in private sector companies around the world, so that any country can tap into the capabilities that might exist in these companies and utilize it for their purposes, whether it be for national security, political, commercial, business, or whatever.
Alongside Miranda Kahn, J.D. Hayworth back with you on America's Forum. We just heard CIA Director John Brennan responding to a question asked by Charlie Rose at the Council for Foreign Relations. What is the cybersecurity threat that the U.S. faces from China?
Well, Brennan expressed concern over small threats, not just those from large nation states. This, as reports claim, China, in an official document, has now admitted to conducting cyber warfare. And in an interview with the Daily Beast, Joe McReynolds of the Center for Intelligence Research and Analysis says, quote, "This is the first time we've seen an explicit acknowledgement of the existence of China's secretive cyber warfare forces from the Chinese side."
You know, we gotta dig deeper into the story. Who better to turn to than our friend, the noted attorney and professor at Bentley University, Stephen J.J. Weisman. Of course, you can read his blog at scamicide.com. So, Stephen, as we welcome you in, acknowledgement from the Chinese, are they simply saying, yeah, we do it? What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, I mean, this news is as startling as Kentucky being a favorite in the NCAA tournament. You know, a lot of us are looking at this and saying, really? You know, last year, 5 Chinese elite hackers were indicted for cyber espionage into American companies. And like the CIA chief said, frankly, there is the big three. There is the United States, there is Russia, and there is China. And we all are very, very good at cyber warfare. But where China has been acting is doing it for corporate espionage. And they have been stealing trade secrets from not just American companies, but companies around the world for years. And now we have sort of an admission that this is going on, but that really doesn't change things. We knew it was going on all along.
So why didn't we do anything to stop it?
You know, that's a good question, Miranda. The question is, what can we do? I mean, certainly officially China has always been denying it. China is denying that still that they were behind the recent medical health identity theft and hacking this week, which they did just as China did the Anthem hacking. What we really need to do is protect our defenses and set up our defenses in these companies. They've got to do a better job, and this is where there is some proposed legislation. I hope it goes through soon because pressure against China just isn't working.
Well, let's talk. You're saying legislation, a national response, but if this is an attack of private business, a lot of times private business can move more quickly than can government to deal with threats. So have we seen anything from private enterprise to take defensive action to deal with the cyber threats?
You know, we've seen some, JD, and some particularly in the financial area have been better than others, although they are still vulnerable. Healthcare continues to be the weak link, and it's a perfect storm for that because the Affordable Care Act required, and it's probably a good thing that it required, the greater digitization of medical records. But the security with so many of these records being accessible is so bad. The FBI just last summer warned the healthcare industry, you are extremely vulnerable. And we've had 100 million people's data breached, hacked, and taken by essentially the Chinese and others. So the shorter answer is what the government can do and what private industry can do is share information so that we can set up better defenses.
Wow, you know, you've talked about healthcare and the digitization of what's happened there, and obviously there are real problems. And it gets back to whether it's private enterprise or government, an ounce of prevention worth a pound of cure. There is more to talk about on the cyber war front and the use of the internet, not so much for fun and profit, but perhaps for terror. Stephen J.J. Weisman will be back with us right
it goes to heart being an American to see an American company like Twitter that's hosted on American servers being used against Americans. But then on the other hand of it is you're just so bold and brazen about it. I mean, to post these graphic pictures of a blown up American soldier, something to that extent, it's like I can't imagine how these companies can stomach allowing this content to be on their networks. It just doesn't seem right.
From yesterday's midpoint, right here on Newsmax TV, Ed Berliner interviewing a computer hacker affiliated with the group Anonymous, that hacker going by the alias XRS1. And as you heard, his reason for wanting to shut down ISIS accounts sounds pretty patriotic.
Yeah, he spoke under the condition we would not reveal his identity, so it kind of looked like he was in a fog. That was on purpose. This is the hacking group has previously been a thorn in the side of American business and the American government, though it now seems we all have a common enemy, at least in the Middle East.
And in the Middle East, that makes its way here via cyberspace. So with that in mind, let's continue our conversation with Bentley University professor, attorney, and internet expert Stephen J.J. Weisman. Anonymous, of all groups, taking the fight to ISIS. That's I guess, a welcome development, Stephen.
Very much so. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And what's kind of interesting is Anonymous, who has taken actions, as you and Miranda indicated, against financial institutions, companies, and the United States government in general, does have, and it's a loose association of hackers, but they do have certain principles. Interestingly enough, which hasn't gotten a lot of play, the group Anonymous has taken down websites of pedophiles. They've gone after them. And now they have gone after ISIS. They have gone online and saying, we own the internet. And what's interesting is the companies like Twitter can't police themselves as well as the hackers Anonymous can. And Anonymous, they acted after the Charlie Hebdo killings, and they took down ISIS sites in France on the web. And they're doing the same thing. They are fighting a cyber war against ISIS, and they're doing a pretty good job.
But Stephen, I have to ask you, is what they're doing legal?
No, absolutely not. But they're still doing it. Interestingly enough, they have attacked ISIS and Kanye West in the last week. Apparently, they're attacking Kanye West for being a hypocrite and ISIS for a lot greater crimes. But the kind of things they are doing are patently illegal, even though I got to admit there are a lot of us that are applauding them.
Well, let me, since we had out the H for hypocrisy, let me take out the file folder H for healthcare again, and that has to do with yet another cyber hack. What is it now? Primera Blue Cross, 11 million people. You touched on medical records earlier, but just how vulnerable are all these records, Stephen?
Extremely. It is probably the area on the internet where we as Americans are the most vulnerable. Interesting thing is, Social Security numbers are one of the key things that, if that gets in the hands of an identity thief, can lead to your identity being stolen and all kinds of bad things happening. And we really don't need to provide that to healthcare providers. They don't need that as an identifier, but we all do that. The biggest problem with medical identity theft, and here's a real issue, is, and this was happened with Primera, they got access to medical records from medical insurance access, and medical identity theft, where the medical insurance is then sold by the hackers, that corrupts the medical records of the victims in a way that we can have the wrong blood type show up on our medical records. We could actually get a wrong transfusion. To make things even worse, HIPAA regulations are such that it makes it almost impossible to correct our records after they've been corrupted.
Wow, this sounds like, because HIPAA passed back when I was in Congress, sounds to me like Congress on both sides of the aisle may have to amend those privacy actions taken through what's called HIPAA. Maybe some work will get done in Washington after all. We'll try to leave it on a hopeful note. Stephen J.J. Weisman, as always, sir, your insights on the internet are invaluable. And of course, you can check out his blog at scamicide.com. Scamicide, Congress, is there something? No,
I like all the eyes.
I tried to have the alliteration just, you elicit alliteration. And we're coming back right after